Welcome, everyone, to Season 8 of the Gather Influence podcast, inviting women of faith across the globe to rise in purpose and influence your world with real conversations, bold words, and whole hearts. My name is Kim Hutchins, your Season 8 podcast host, along with my co-host, Cathie Ostapchek. We are so glad you're here. We want to start by thanking our Season 8 sponsor, Global Aid Network, revealing hope and restoring life. Global Aid Network is revealing hope by sharing God's unconditional love and restoring life by demonstrating the gospel through compassionate action to those who are living in poverty, injustice, and crisis around the world. Please check out the amazing work they do globally at globalaid.net. Our theme for Season 8 of the podcast is Who Told You No? And we're sparking transformative conversations to make a positive impact in our nation and the world. You will love our conversations with the amazing women who will share their real and inspiring stories of their leadership journeys. We are here to come alongside you to connect, equip, and mobilize you as the female church in Canada and beyond. And want you to see yourselves in the lives of the women you hear on the podcast. And today, I'm excited to bring you Anu George. Cathie and Anu had a fantastic conversation about her upbringing and leadership at such a young age, her season of no from God, and how we anticipate no's as a woman. Let's get started.
Welcome everyone to the Gather Influence podcast. This season, our theme is Who Told You No? And I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Anu George Conjanithopol. And I first met Anu. I never met her. I saw her from a distance and I started fangirling her from there. But she was in, I believe, Austin, Texas on the If Gathering platform telling her story. And it had to do with a beautiful scarf. And I was forever changed, not only by her story, but the fact that it represented the story of so many and directly leads to the organization that she is leading here in Canada, IJM Canada. But she is here as a woman, a person, a mother, a friend, a sister, a daughter, and I think part of the unique sisterhood in Canada. And I'm just so grateful she's in our country. Welcome, Anu, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Cathie. What an honor and privilege to hang out with you. I mean, to get the platform is awesome, right? But I get to do that with you. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, we can't do a 3-hour podcast. We'll have to cut it down. But when we did have lunch a few weeks ago in the summer, I think that was, just the start of something beautiful, because there's always the story that we see from the platform from a distance, and then there's the real story behind the scenes. And I'm going to share a little bit about you to some of our listeners who don't know you and should know you, but you've had 13 years of leadership experience with IJM, International Justice Mission. It's so interesting that I went to the very first banquet ever for IJM here in Canada and was at the very first fundraiser, I think about 15, 18 years ago. And IJM was always a very valued partner of Gather at our inception. They showed the stage with compassion. And we were just so happy to bring awareness to the work that you do. But you started in South Asia, where you served as the Director of Operations, the Director of National Interventions, and the Director of Legal. That's the life of a woman, multifaceted. My gosh, during your time with IJM, you've worked extensively to impact justice systems by collaborating with state and local governments in South Asia. So this is really interesting to me that you initiated and led IJM's first ever partnership program and oversaw the training of more than 17,000 police officers, government officials, and NGOs on the rescue and rehabilitation of individuals trapped in slavery and bringing criminals to justice. And as a result of your leadership, more than 10,000 individuals have been rescued from forced labor, slavery, and I'm sure more every day, even as we speak. So your life is not a small life, Anu. Those numbers do not depict a small life, but yet I know that your posture is one of real humility. And I appreciate that about you. And you have such a concern for the other. there's so much else about your life. We are going to put it in the show notes. Highly educated and so well spoken about the things that you're passionate about around the world. So I'm going to start with the first question. And in answering that question, please feel free to share any parts of your life, because you just didn't land here today in a straight line from somewhere. There were many routes, many no's, and many yeses to get to where you
so
are.
Effortless.
Just effortless, right?
So effortless.
My first question, though, is who told you no?
Oh my goodness. We would need that 3-hour podcast if I had to list the names and situations and scenarios. I think I heard no at every single juncture. And it started young. It started when I was really young, which is odd because I grew up in an environment which did not have much no's, my parents and my siblings, and how they thought of me. But just outside of the house was the rest of the world. The first time I had to exercise my leadership muscle was, I don't know, when I was 13 or something. And, we had water scarcity in our region, which meant that huge tankers would come with water and every household will run to the water tanker with pots to get water. And I thought it was odd that some colonies, or the streets that we lived in, had to do this, while some streets would have their own water access. They would come at a specific time and they would store the water, and people could come and take that water whenever they wanted to. So that was a wealthier kind of a neighborhood. So I thought it was odd and I thought it was unacceptable. And when I went to the first official, so I'm looking at who is answerable to this. I mean, whose responsibility it is to distribute this fairly. I did some search and I figured out it was the local municipal office, but I'm just 12 or 13, right? I mean, who would take me seriously? So I wore my aunt's hand-me-down salwar, which made me look a lot older than my age. And then I walked in and I said, hey, our street needs this water facility. We need our own tank, which is built so that all of us work. My mother was working, so it just made no sense for people who are sitting in the house. Even for them, it was challenging, because you need to send the kids to school, you need to bathe, you need to cook, and you can't be, running with pots for water whenever the tanker comes. That's just not practical. So he was like, well, that doesn't happen that way, my child. I was like, don't child me. Don't child me. Because I had purchased a bare act on the responsibility of the official on what he needs to do if there is a situation like this. And I showed it to him, highlighted in pencil, because we didn't have highlighters then, highlighted in pencil and showed it to him. And I was like, well, this is your responsibility. If you're not going to carry this out, I'm going to write to the national newspaper, because I can, and report you. I don't know what part of the conversation convinced him, whether he thought that, oh my goodness, I can't believe that this child is asking me to do my work, or he was actually moved. But in less than 24 hours, we had access to water. And soon, almost everyone in that locality started coming to me, to my house, call my parents and say, is your daughter there? We have a problem with garbage issues. And, she might be able to talk to the corporation. So that was my first no. And then it is a series of no. When I started my first business, when I was 15, when I wanted to get permission to perform street theater in the slums so that I could invite children to be excited about education and parents to let their kids go to school, it was always a no. So what would I do? I would stand there, this, weird, gawky teenager performing street theater solo. They'd be like, what is wrong with this kid? I just do it. So kind of developed a thick skin at that age. And it just felt like, as a girl then, and eventually as a woman, that thick skin was going to be a necessary, second skin for the rest of my life. In school, I heard no because I was apparently not ladylike. Teachers would come home to complain. When I was, doing this part of my social work in a city, I got in trouble with the local police. and then the local goons, which got me beaten up, paralyzed, fractured neck, no teeth, all of those things. And then, even, and I mean, that was the world, but also from God, sometimes it was like a season of hearing no. My journey in becoming a mother, which is a podcast by itself. It was like, no, 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 every single time, till it became a yes. So it was not one, it was two that I was blessed with. Being here in Canada, I deal with every day I deal with a series of subtle no's because of who I am, where I come from, or what I represent. So yeah, it and I think this is not unique to me, Cathie. I think you would agree. Women have been designed to even approach every single problem with, I'm going to hear a no. So let me present this case in a way that it is a yes. So when we are having a conversation, like I have this conversation with Sachin, I'm like, Sachin, when you need something, you just present that need. When I need something, I need to think of 8 layers of who's going to say no and how I should appeal to these various stakeholders, whether it is in the household, whether it is outside, whether it is in a society, whether it is for work, simply because I'm not you. So do you understand the difference? And he's like, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of no's, Cathie, a lot of no's.
A lot of no's. Yeah, I mean, that brings up so many responses. First of all, the need to self-manage, right? We have to anticipate that there will be no's. But for the women that don't, what do you say to the women who take the no's personally? Like the no's and just quit, or, internalize it to the point where they stop asking?
I gently refer them back to, the Bible.
Mhm.
I don't see many yeses there, apart from people being obedient.
Yeah.
Think of Moses, like when he started with a no, when he had to go to the pharaohs, he heard no, not once, not twice, like bazillion times, despite there being this entire strong force of God gifting like a series of plagues to remind that this no needs to become a yes. But the end game of all of these, no stories have always been anointed. So yeah, it is, and especially, like I said, I was forced to develop a thick skin because I knew that that was the only way out. Because if I received that no, then there was literally gonna be consequences around that. In the first case, we would not have water, which is fundamental. So I would encourage the women who take these no's personally with asking themselves the question, what is at stake? If I receive that no as a no, what am I going to lose? Most importantly, what are the other women who are looking up to me going to lose? So that price and cost of the no, especially the no that you're taking personally, is not just going to stop its impact with you. There is a line of women, young girls, your daughters, your neighbors, who are watching, taking cues, taking notes and figuring out, oh, maybe I should just do what she did and just sit back, and because everybody's going to say no anyway. It's just not a great idea to begin with. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's brilliant. I don't think we often consider those that are watching us, those that are coming behind us, particularly generations of women where our yes matters, our not quitting matters. And so thank you for bringing that and highlighting that. So the other thing you refer to is when God says no, and that could be a good no and a healthy no. And he said no to you when you were trying to have children, and it was a no until it was a yes. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of gotten to this place in life where I desire to hear a no from God sometimes, because it honestly makes life a lot more easier, right? Because you kind of feel like you're this hamster in the wheel, trying to fight against, which is our everyday, which is the reality of most women who fall outside the protection of law. And for those who are trying to help those women to come to a place of safety. This feeling that, well, this too has gone beyond my control. So when it comes to decision making, which we have to on a daily basis, there are a bazillion decisions that we take as leaders, as women, as moms, as spouses, as people who are navigating the family in one direction. There are times when I'm like, can you just close that door so I know for certain that I shouldn't be there? Because I deeply want it. I desperately want it. And I'm waiting. And it's hard. But if you could just shut that door quickly, I can move on and I can know that, God, that's not where you want me to be. So sometimes I desire that no. And then there are these other times when that no takes forever. I mean, it's not like it's a unique situation for me. We've all had that. And those no's can be in the form of heartbreaks that takes really long time. Relationships that we are trying to figure out within the family, outside of the family, at workplace. We're like, I don't know what to make sense of this. But it is just hard. I'm staying in this wilderness, not really knowing if I'm at the start of the game or at the end of the game. I know I'm in a tunnel and I don't see the light. And at that point, a no would be so welcome because it is easy in a way where, okay, well, if God has said a no, he's figured it out. I know that there is going to be a space for me to rise like a phoenix. At this point, it doesn't feel like it. But I think because I've had so many no's and my personal experience with violence, especially, was probably one of my biggest turning points in my life. It felt like this big no, because that happened when I was in the pursuit of seeking justice. I was, in the space of doing what I was fully convinced that I was created to be doing, helping people, stepping up, being brave, undaunted by the no's of others. But when violence struck me, when I was in the thick of that, I was like, what are you saying no to now? Like, why would you say no to me now? Like, it's so bizarre. I thought you created me for this. I mean, like every single episode in my life, all of these experiences that I had was leading up to this. Like, how can you say no now? It just made no sense. But when it happened, I realized that it was leading to a resounding yes to the prayers of many. So it didn't mean that he wasn't answering my prayers. It just meant that, in my case, 10,000 other prayers were getting answered. So when in hindsight, I am very grateful for those no's, which has happened in my life. And truth be told, sometimes I look forward to it because then I know, okay, you're doing it. I can see it. Maybe not yet, but it's coming. And I'm looking forward to it because it has always been beautiful, Cathie. When his no throws me back on a path that I would have never been on, however weak, however battered, however, recovering, however imperfect, it's probably a far better journey than tagging along my, weak yes in the absence of God's plan. Am I making sense? I speak like a scatterbrain, but
no, I'm just, it's the beautiful no's of God that lead to his greater yes, is what I think you're saying.
Yes.
You said all of these no's, and there are the no's that men and women will say to us that we can't take personally or can't let us, take us out of the game. But then there's the no's of God those are the nuanced gray areas where, like, how am I supposed to feel about that when I'm doing what you wanted me to do? And still, yeah. So that's quite a discernment journey. What do you do in those moments? Like, how did you actually process that? Because that was a personal violation of yourself
Yeah.
in the midst of
I would say
doing
it is
the
the
deepest
hardest year.
desires.
Even to this day, when I think of it, one of my most humbling moments, because even as I was hearing these, frequent no's, I did come into this world as a very, at that point, accomplished, therefore arrogant woman. So even just before, getting beaten up, when the police came or when the goons came, my approach was, oh, you don't want me to do this? Give it to me in writing. I'm a lawyer. I thought like I just had it all covered. And when that happened, it was humbling. It was humbling because for that year, it was a reminder of I could be all those things, yet nothing, which I was on that bed for months together, just staring at the ceiling, unable to speak, and people having to carry me, clean me. I used to be a marathon runner. I can barely walk at that point. Forgot how to read and write my mother tongue, had to relearn English. It was kind of being reborn in a familiar environment, but with peculiar circumstances, which made this entire rebirth the most painful experience. And sometimes starting over is not a good thing, because you realize that you can only do so much on your strength, which for me at that point was non-existent. So those months, I learned to value family so much more. And was I filled with regret? Yes. So much regret about the things that I should have done, that I could have done, that I may not ever be able to do again. I was extremely overburdened with that regret till it came to a point where I'm like, no, this is all that, or all how the world is seeing me, as this beaten up, battered woman whose master's, whose law degree is useless, who is pretty much gonna have to figure out how to live for the rest of her life. This is going to be a new story. And it is a story that I have not had the opportunity to author, but I am going to enjoy it because I'm going to be able to let go and let God. And that was transformational. When that realization hit me, that was the night I walked. Because then everything else that the doctor said, everything else that, I was worried about just went out of the window. That complete surrender gave me complete strength. And literally the hands and the legs to function and to be able to walk, not on my strength. So that made me stronger and fearless. What violence does to you, Cathie, could be many things, but the one thing that it did to me was kind of come to terms with the worst has happened. And now there is an urgent need to protect others from experiencing what I did. So fear went out of the window and the sense of urgency came. And then this deep purpose, which is always there, just got deeper and more rigorous in how I would do it, leaving behind all of these credentials, which I thought made me, but taking in the Savior who brought me back to where I could walk again, speak again, and use both of these abilities to serve. With the right motivation.
Right.
and not make it about me. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like God asked you to lay down something great to pick up something greater. And the way seems to be pain and suffering, which doesn't make sense. But who you are now, because of that situation, you have said yes to a greater yes. Let's talk about some of the yeses that brought you to today. I know we've talked a little bit, and I know there's the yeses that come to us sometimes, maybe, but there's also the yeses that you initiated.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about some of those.
Well, after post-paralysis, I think I became a new kind of a person where I stopped seeing myself as this person who could do anything. For a season, in a way, it increased my reliance on God. So it brought a new kind of a strength, and it forged a new kind of a path. So some of the yeses that I told myself was, when I was in Canada, studying and teaching at McGill University as a Sauvé Fellow on the base of the project, which got me in trouble. This was 2010. The first time I came across International Justice Mission, the first thing that came to my mind was, goodness gravy. This is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. This is where Anu George, you belong. Because all of these experiences that you've had in your life was just building up to this moment, to doing this. You thought it was out there in the slums. Well, you got walloped after that. But here you are. And here is this organization. The theory of change aligns with your experience. This is where you should be. On my knees, crying for hours together. You know why? Because I know that I finally found the place where I would be the perfect fit, but also found the place where I would be the worst fit. Because by then, it is not the Anu George before the paralysis. My multiple masters, my law degree, my experience, my competence, they were all out of the window. It was useless. I was just picking up to learn how to speak all over again, making a ton of mistakes grammatically, which I even now do. I couldn't even put a sentence together. And I was like, why? Had I known of this maybe 2 years ago, instead of being on the streets in the slums, I would have been here. And I would have been serving, and all of my education would have been so useful. But here I am now, useless to the core, but knowing fully well that this is where I should be. But I said yes to trying at that point. I was like, no, I'm going to apply. All logic, all of what common sense would inform a regular individual, inform me too. But I decided to say no to that and saying yes to what I felt at that moment. I felt called. And I pursued, and I got several no's. I wrote to every single IJM in the world. Got rejected from all the advancement offices. Canada was the first. Got a no from here. UK never responded. Then I went to the UK office when I was in Oxford for a paper presentation. I went there, like I was, and you don't have addresses posted online. So I'm begging. I'm like, give me a chance, give me a chance. 1.5 years, Cathie, I'm not even kidding. So I had an opportunity here in Canada to work with an organization, and my executive director of the foundation that I was a Sauvé Fellow at was like, so you're going to say yes to that opportunity? I was like, no, I need to go back. I need to go. And they're like, but IGM has not given you the offer. I was like, no, they have not yet, but I'm going. It's like, but Anu, that's stupid. I was like, I know, it is counterintuitive, but I don't care for this opportunity. I know I have to go there. It's like, yeah, but what if they don't want you? It's like, I'd be the janitor. I would beg them to let me work for free. I said, but what if they don't want even that? I was like, I'm going to try Ian Valaskakis. That's what I told him that. And then I go down, I open my inbox and I see the offer letter. I decided to say no when it was hard to say no, but stuck on to my yes. And continued on with my yes from there as the director legal, which was my first assignment. And then to lead the partnership work, it started with a no, because I was like, I'm just learning the job. I don't think I'm qualified, but then said yes to what my leaders believed in, what God called me to, and had the opportunity to lead one of the most significant programs for IJM globally, which led to the rescue of 10,000 people, but has enabled us to protect 500 million people by 2030. Those are all yeses, Cathie. Yeses that came in the full knowledge that I'm not enough on my own, but completely whole if I'm in alignment with my maker and if I'm surrendering to his will. So my courage was new and it did not come from me.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of it that did come from you. Just going after what you felt that you should go after is something that in North America, so many of us just wait for it to come to us. And then if it doesn't come to us, we go, oh, well, it didn't come. But you had this sense of, this is going to happen. This is where I belong. And you have that clarity of the call. We wrestle with, I think, the no's and the yeses, like what to say no to, what to say yes to. How do you make decisions now?
Oh, just the same. And since you referred to North America, and I have a few friends who struggle with this, and I ask them quite plainly, and I say, at the risk of being judged, may I ask you this, dear friend, who's also North American, are you waiting for it to come to you because you can afford it?
Wow.
Yeah. And your answer is the answer that you have to give yourself. So what is going to push you to the point of desperation? For me, I pursued because I knew I could not afford to hear a no. I knew I had to show up for those and be there in the gap between the perpetrator and the victim and stand there in the gap and walk with them to the journey of being a survivor. I could not afford it. So I challenge my dear friends, can you afford it? Is that why you're waiting for it to fall on your lap? Because you know what? It might. And when that does, I would actually feel sorry for you because you aimed low enough and were happy when you met that goal. And I might have offended her and others, but I walked away feeling, well, I had to say it because some of these things that we receive here are privileges that we don't understand, that we take for granted. So many things, like even faith for that matter, Cathie. Here I engage in so many conversations that are talking about the semantics around what we feel and a whole lot of things. I'm like, well, you can afford to have that conversation. But there are countries where expressing your faith could lead to your death. So there is a price attached to it.
Yeah.
Despite that cost, there are people who decide to say yes to the hard thing. So how's that for a perspective? And I push that back to my friends. Yeah. And I forget what question you asked, but this is my, bird brain. Yeah. I keep pecking around and I forget what I started with. You can repeat.
I think that right there is gold. I mean, we are in a culture where we tend to feel isolated from the rest of the world, but what a woman carries here generally is often not the highest stake decision, in our no's and yeses, although it is getting harder and harder. But when you carry the weight of the women, all the women in the world, there's a lot at stake. And for future generations, our yeses definitely matter. So I so appreciate you sharing that. What is it going to cost you? What are the stakes? If it's low hanging fruit, then yeah, that's a good word. Thank you, Anu. Awesome. We just want it so clear cut. We just want it like so, black and white, easy. And it's not that way at all. And I think we can never imagine how, we look at somebody else's life and we tend to compare. They either have it easier than us or they have it worse than us. And then we place ourselves somewhere in the continuum. I'm either better than that person or worse than that person. My decisions are harder or they're not as hard. But I think for each of us, God asks us a very unique, calls us to a very unique story. And yours is so unique and it's so beautiful. You've talked about some of the big challenges in your life. And I've also seen you a little bit on social media posting about motherhood and lots of things. And I think, okay, what is it for you now? Like, is it balance? Is it time? What is it that you carry that is kind of challenging you right now in your yeses and nos?
Everything is challenging. And I don't think it has been anything but challenging for the generations that came before me and the generations that is going to come after me. Being a woman is challenging. Where you're born may impact it slightly, but that doesn't take away how challenging it is to just be. I mentioned this years ago. For a lot of people, sometimes just to be a woman and show up and to live is an act of courage. Because your day-to-day is a combination of surviving. You're surviving, and sometimes it's patriarchy, the other time it's misogyny, the other times it is the challenges at workplace, and a combination of all of this and the expectations that the society has on you, the expectation you have on yourself, the perspectives you accidentally kind of spill over because you're overwhelmed with just being this person you were created to be. So yes, being a woman is challenging enough. Being a mother is taking, and I will speak for myself, and hopefully it resonates for women who are listening and watching us. When I was blessed with 2 daughters, the first thought that crossed my mind, after a week of feeding them and getting to normalcy, was I feel like my burden, and I'm calling it burden intentionally, of just being able to wake up in the morning and show up the way that I'm showing up, increased 3-fold, because now I'm thinking and carrying the weight of how these daughters are going to be able to show up without allowing the world to weigh them down, without allowing the world to define how they should live, how they should show up, how they should think. Just yesterday on Threads, I saw this post, and there was this person attacking this woman for making a statement of, this was a working woman saying something about being a working mom. And I was like, can you at least let her be in this space? She might have chosen that space with a name that is not hers because she doesn't have a place to talk about this. She probably cannot voice that opinion in her house, even though you say, like, we are this developed country and it's a country which is progressive and all of that. No, we are braving the same storm in different boats. Some boats have more leaks. Where I come from, it's mostly leaks, less of boat, but it's pretty much the same storm. And motherhood transformed me. what it did was two things. One, it allowed me to appreciate womanhood in totality.
Yeah.
It allowed me to appreciate the journey that my mother and her mother and her mother's mother would have been on before I could come here and show up as a response to many of their years of anxiety and angst and heartbreaks, and as hopefully a light for my children as they embark on their future going forward. And the other thing that motherhood did to me was increased my ability and capacity to care. As much as, there was some research which said that a nursing mom works for about 1,400 hours. I nursed twins for 4 years. So you can do that calculation. And plus working as a full-time CEO. And a normal person would be like, oh my goodness, how did you show up? I was able to show up more because I could care more and because I could carry more. We bring to this world lives. And every time we bring these lives to this world, it does not diminish us. On the contrary, it expands us to be amazing leaders, much better human beings, and people with this amazing capacity that is maximized to give love. That's what motherhood did to me. And I try and encourage women. Most of it is by satire and, taking a dig at what it is to be a mom. But my hope is that I can draw them close to how beautiful it is, how challenging it is, and how unique it is that we get to do this and that. Am I making sense?
Yeah, because whenever you do post something, I go, oh, yeah, she gets it. And I love the fact that you're not hiding that part of your identity. I mean, you are leader, you are CEO, you are justice warrior, and you are mother, and you are, and this is part of what makes us who we are. And whether anyone listening has not given birth physically to a child themselves, but nurtures and cares. And I love the fact that you said when we've been loved, or we can care more, we can love more. And I think to see that, to have that insight is so helpful. It doesn't limit us at all.
Yeah. And I also, sorry, not to interrupt, but I also believe that, like you mentioned, motherhood is not exclusive. Even if you're not a mom, when you think of this online sexual exploitation of children work that we are kind of actively working on, protecting these kids, it's 1 million kids every year. And Canada is one of the top 4 countries which is consuming this. We are creating that demand for these children to be exploited for $1.27 or whatever amount it is. But even if I wasn't a mother, it would ache because it did ache, because it's not exclusive. It is not an emotion that is reserved just for the woman who's able to bring forth a life. And that is why it is so complex and beautiful to be a woman. So womanhood first. And yeah, I mean, I'm just so proud that I get to be her, if that makes sense, that I get to be this creation that can give and also value life in a way that it's meaningful. Sorry.
And I'm so privileged to be in this room with you and hear your words, because the no's that were horrific that you experienced didn't stop you. And if they would have stopped you, you wouldn't be here in Canada doing what you so beautifully do for the world, for the at-risk children and adults in the world. What is the word of encouragement that you can give to women? I mean, it can be anything, in the area of yeses and nos. Like, it's not black and white, right? It's nuanced. It's gray. It's discernment. It's community. It's call. It's clarity. It's all the things to encourage someone who's wrestling maybe with right now. Maybe they're carrying something, but they're fearful to step out and say yes to it.
Yeah. I think before I offer a word of encouragement or advice, I mean, Indian women very freely offer advice,
So do Ukrainian women.
So we get along. But I think I should offer an example. I've heard no to pretty much anything and everything I thought was a grand idea. But I started it with a belief that if God has put it on my heart, who is man to take him or me away from it? And I think it's a simple switch of perspective. I mean, there might be 10,000 people who believe that you're going to fail. But if there is one you who has this dream or calling planted in your heart, then it's more than enough. So my word of encouragement would be to believe. Believe in your maker. Believe in the one who called you to this place. Believe in what your heart is aching for, whether it's a business mission, but believe first and figure out the solving and executing after. Believe that it's already done. Because my advice to myself has been, if there have been 1,000 reasons to say no, is there one reason to say yes? And if I'm convicted enough, it'll take more than 1 million men to steer me off that path.
Beautiful. You need to write a book.
I am. It's getting out next year. I don't know
Wonderful.
if I read it myself, but in the process of figuring out the first chapter.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful because the math on that is God math, right? It's the one yes. And there could be 99 no's before you get to that one yes, but that one yes is all you need because God has already given you his. Well, thank you, Anu. It's been such an encouragement. I want to honor your time and the time of those listening, but we will be back in conversation. I can guarantee it because there's so much more to talk about, but you've been a gift to gather, a gift to the women who are listening in. There are thousands of them. And so just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Cathie. I love you so much. It's so fun that we get to do this together. And I think, before I go, I know you want to respect my time. I'm not respecting yours right now, but take this. You can edit it off later if you want to. But my dream is that we have women like us come together, band together, and stand up against those men who stand together so that they can perpetrate this violence. Yeah. So let's band together. It is the easiest way to fight injustice. Whether it's you, whether it's these amazing people who are listening on the show, let's come together. And that would be kingdom come. And I look forward to that day.
Yeah, I'm already there with you. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Global Aid Network dreams of a world with flourishing communities where people are thriving in all aspects of their life. Since beginning in 1998, GAIN has mobilized resources to help people in over 49 countries around the world, most of which have been women and children. The suffering of women and children produces an immediate heart cry in most people worldwide. When a child remains in need, not only is their present life, but also their future is subjected to heartache. Emotional trauma caused by suffering can gouge a deep scar in children, stunting their ability to give and receive love and belief that they are precious creations with significant roles to play in their nation's future. At the same time, women of all ages often live in years of generational poverty or are treated as second class, and more especially during times of natural disasters and humanitarian crisis. As a result, 2 of GAIN's core strategies are focused on women and young girls. The Water for Life Initiative in Economic Empowerment, by helping to improve the physical health of communities, encourage healthy communication, and foster an environment of respect for women, as well as empowering and equipping women with the skills and confidence to participate in and run incoming earning activities. GAIN hopes to see a world of flourishing communities where women and girls are able to thrive in all aspects of their lives. This Christmas, if you would like to impact the lives of more women, go to globalaid.net/catalog. For those joining us today, I hope that you were encouraged by Cathie's conversation with Anu, and I love how the beautiful no's of God led to a yes. To connect with Anu, check out our show notes. In these show notes, we'll post links and helpful resources that were mentioned today. Remember to subscribe on your podcast app, and for those watching the video edition, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss an episode. Also, hop onto the discussion by following us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Gather Women or online at gatherwomen.com. Be sure to join our subscriber list to find out how you can join the hundreds of women in Canada who are just like you, wanting to connect for mutual encouragement and leadership influence. Looking forward to next time. Thanks for joining us.